first thing we wanted to kind of uncover is, who are they? Like when you think about millionaires, and specifically the millionaires with whom we work, what do they look like? What are their characteristics? What are their traits? So we're going to talk first about who they are, and then we're going to dive into what did they do? How do they behave? What are some of the things that they did that got them to where they are? So without further ado, let's dive right in, Brian. We're going to start with this first one. And this was just kind of an easy one to start out with. What is their marital status? Where are, at least from the survey of folks that we looked at, where do they sit from a relational standpoint in terms of long-term intimate relationships?
Yeah, and I mean, way above the U.S. average, because I mean, only 50% of the public is married, according to some of the research Daniel pulled up for us. But yet, out of our client base, 85% are married.
Now, I think what's really interesting is you think about marriage in the sense of, okay, it sounds great. I've got dual incomes. I've got more income coming in. We share expenses, so expenses go down. So it ought to be very easy to build wealth, or easier to build wealth if we have more parties involved in that. And while that can be true, the negative other side of this is that one of the most devastating things that can happen to your financial life is to go through a divorce. We've done the research before that says on average, 77% of wealth is lost through a divorce, and it normally starts 4 years before the divorce is finalized. So when it comes to choosing a partner, when it comes to getting married, when it comes to making that lifelong decision, make sure you make it well, because it can have huge financial implications over the long term.
Yeah, a lot of you who are watching this on YouTube, you're also probably seeing that other column with 8%. Just so you know, that's divorced, widowed, and then have a partner.
Yep, that's perfect. So then we asked, okay, how old are our millionaires? We know that on average, most millionaires don't reach that status early on. It's something that tends to happen later in life. So is that true amongst our population?
Yeah, and this is, we've heard the stat for years, because I think Ramsey Solutions has the largest, scientifically, where they actually had enough in the audience, and it's the largest, that they average age is 49 for when people cross into seven figures. I think it's kind of interesting. We resemble that in the fact that you can see our largest block is the 45 to 54-year-olds with 35%. However, look, younger than that, 35 to 44, we do have a lot of financial mutants in our audience that are breaking the mold, actually doing it earlier. So that's 25%. And then 7% of our audience is under 35 years of age.
I think that ought to be telling for all of us. For those of us that are young and aspiring, we see the stuff on TikTok, we see the stuff on Instagram. That is not reality. I mean, even in our population, the majority of folks that have reached millionaire status had to work at it for a while. It's not something that comes early. It's not something that comes easy. It takes time to move in that direction. Don't let the world around you tell you a different story.
Let's talk about, I'd like to know, one of the bigger things is income. I mean, because a lot of people are curious about this. And now look, once again, I think financial mutants, they're different than the typical population. Sure. And we do a lot of content showing you don't have to be a big shovel to be rich. I've showed, when we do 401k presentations, we show consistently that you can have an income less than $50,000 a year, and if you start early enough, you can still build seven-figure status. But I will tell you, looking at the data, it's only 12% of our millionaires have incomes under $100,000, which shows that it is easier. And this is a Captain Obvious moment here. Is obviously if your shovel is bigger, meaning you have a higher income, it does get easier to build wealth. And you can see 100 to 200,000 is 18%, 200 to 500,000, which is our largest group, is 47%.
Yeah, so it's not something that is a requirement, but it does make it a little bit easier. But I wouldn't let that be discouraging. The most important part of the discipline money time equation is time. So if you can give it a long enough time, even a little bit of money can turn into a lot. We know you can go download this at moneyguide.com/resources. $1 can turn into $88 if you give it enough time. It's just a matter of doing that. So it doesn't take a huge shovel, but a big shovel definitely helps.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the balance of what creates success. Of course, discipline's out there, but time is the biggest changer of your future. If you don't have a big income, make sure you are definitely taking advantage of the component of time and the compounding growth.
Another thing we wanted to dive into is, how were our millionaires educated? Did they come from families that were sending them to fancy private schools and they spend a lot on education? And how did that play out? And what's interesting is we found that 80% of our population actually went to public K through 12, and then 67% of our population went to public universities, not private institutions. I thought that was kind of surprising. So in order to build wealth, in order to be able to work towards financial independence, it wasn't about going to the most prestigious school. It wasn't about having the most closely knit network. It was about essentially getting educated and being educated well.
Yeah, I think this flies right along with when you see about public companies, who the CEOs are. A lot of them do come from public colleges as well. So, and look, there's nothing wrong if you went to a private school or other things, but I think that there is a lesson here is primarily focus on what your career choice or your major is, because this was the biggest takeaway I had is that, and I've covered this stat, 73% of the general public do not work in their field of study that they went to college for. And that's devastating.
It's insane. It's crazy.
So imagine our surprise, and this is not the first year it's shown up, is that we're the exact inverse of this with our clients, and the fact that 72% actually do work in their field of study. That shows allocator of resources, people who are on the path to becoming millionaires. They recognize the value of, hey, if I'm going to go to college, if I'm going to invest and spend this money, I better be really deliberate about what I'm choosing to work in and actually work in that field.
I love that you say allocated resources. They recognize that their time matters, and the things that they devote their time to matters. And so they made that decision really, really well.